So, can you all hear me and see me?
Yep.
Happy days, Matty Hayes. Ah, oh, I don't know where do we. So now here we are down into your lecture area, and we'll open up the slides. Okay. Now, some of you I know have looked at least at the videos that I upload after going to all that phenomenal effort loading fantastic videos last week. 4, I think, I uploaded. Teams and team Belbin's team roles and leadership and all that sort of stuff. So I'm wrapping it up today. Not talking again about leadership or anything like it after this, and teams for that matter. On today's topic, which is building a new venture team. And to put 3 fellas in there. Don't know why. I don't know. Mario Brothers? I don't know. Maybe. In any case, it's getting towards the end of the evening, and I will rattle through these. There's just some stuff you need to know anyway. As I said, it will benefit you down the road, if not immediately. I'm not having. I don't appear to be having any issues with your teams. Everyone seems to be mucking in, from what I can gather. I've had no complaints. I've had no dropouts yet. Well, it's interesting, in another module where I'm working with teams, I've had a few issues. All right, team players aren't pulling their weight, and some people have been kicked off teams. So, God help them. They have all the work to do on their own. But anyway, you don't have that problem. I'm quite sure. So, let us get through this and get you out the door as quickly as possible, or off the screen in this case. Jeez. And I can't play music in the background, unfortunately. Much and all as I would love to. The stuff that I can play, you probably wouldn't like. It's all synthy type, synthwave music, and I don't know if you're into that. But in any case, the other stuff, the 80s stuff, I can't play in the background because it will get hammered on YouTube. It'll get a strike. So we won't even bother. We'll just keep going as is. So new venture teams. What we're going to cover today. Primary elements of a new venture team, what they are. The liabilities of the newness of teams, the difference between heterogeneous and homogeneous founding teams. Not even going to talk about cisgender teams. I'm sure they exist, but they can exist in another world as far as I'm concerned. And then you have the personal attitudes, strengths of the founders, and choices of successfully launching an entrepreneurial venture. Setting up a new practice, delivering a new service. And then we'll describe how to construct a skills profile and explain how it helps in startup identity gaps. So we have gaps inside in new ventures. Now, just to separate out before I go into the detail, the heterogeneous and homogeneous teams, simply put, is that if I was doing this with my business faculty students, they would all be homogenous for the most part. They're all coming from the same business backgrounds. Whereas with you guys, at least I have some level of heterogeneity. I have sports physiotherapists, I have nutritionists. There are primarily 2 big differences that you have. So at least you have differences, and that's what it means in heterogeneity, that you have a variety of backgrounds and skills and so on. And we'll talk about the success or failures of those and as we're going on. We'll also look at the board of directors and explain the difference between inside directors and outside directors. There is a difference. Outside directors are non-executive directors. In other words, they're there in name, maybe because they've invested some money in you. But you need to have a board of directors technically. And then you have, what are the 2 primary ways in which non-employee members of a startup's new venture team can help the firm. So these can be the non-executive directors. They could be mentors. They could be Enterprise Ireland people. They could be your local county enterprise board, all these entities. And these are very powerful because a lot of these can help you get your venture off the ground, help you with marketing and all this sort of stuff, provide grants and, introduce you, more importantly, to a network of people. And then the purpose of forming an advisory board, which I've kind of alluded to just there, and then look at the new venture firms, how they use consultants for help and advice. You know, I do a lot of that. I get people calling me and asking me for my words of wisdom. God help them. But you get teams, you get people contacting you, and you do have mentors and advisors, consultants, call them what you will. Some are paid, some like me are just free giving of our time. We like to help people when they're genuinely stuck. So, new venture teams, group of founders, employees, advisors, move on to a new venture from some idea to a fully functional firm. So a couple of people come together to have some kind of an idea. Let's go set up a business, whatever the case may be. A shebeen. A lockdown shebeen. Anyway, they might set up some kind of new venture and that's all. They come together to have this initial idea. And then the team doesn't come together all at once. Instead, it's built as the new firm can afford to hire additional personnel. So that's the key point. This is the whole point about raising money. And oftentimes, investors and banks and whomever, they'll look at you in terms of how fast are you burning money. So you don't put everything in place. I mean, you won't be putting, all your equipment, buying everything, buying big factories or buying consultancy equipment for your physio and all that, but stacking the place out with every brand, and that'd be ludicrous. Although, mind you, people used to do this, back in the early 2000s. They splashed out and all the stuff, put everything in place, didn't even have a business. But that doesn't happen nowadays because people will build it gradually. There was a guy, actually, worth having a look at, Dr. Shoe, as in doctor and SHOE. He's a youngish guy. He started painting shoes, basically. He's Irish. It's relatively new. I only had an interaction with him the other evening, actually. And he did a fantastic job of I can't think of the young chap's name. He won the men's elite cycling last year in national championships. He's now gone to the Trinity Pro Continental team, but he painted his shoes for him, little shamrocks and all that sort of stuff. And as he said, and what really grabbed my attention was that he started doing this as a hobby, and then more people started to ask him, would you do this, and so on. And before now, he's managed to quit his full-time job, and this is what he does for a living. And he just very simply says, follow your passion. So you find something that you enjoy doing, and the rewards will follow. And it was a perfect example of this. Now, he doesn't have a big organization. It's just himself. And maybe in time he'll hire a few people, admin people. But as time goes on, and this is the point, you bring in people. He might bring in an accountant or a part-time bookkeeper and so on. He might bring in somebody to help him organize his stock and take orders and all that sort of stuff, and free up his own time so as he can keep doing the artistic work that he does. He might even look for other people and train them in his own way and get them and get up. So over time he'll expand, maybe find a different premises. That's precisely how every startup works. And before you even go into a practice, if you were opening up a physio practice, you focused on, well, what area am I going to go into? If it's I don't know, you may not need all the equipment. You might just need a simple table. And the ones I've seen some students carrying around these awkward looking big tables and so on, for portable tables for carrying out physio and things like that. You might start off with something as simple as that, and a few basic pieces of equipment, for muscle relaxants, these kind of vibrating machines thingies, I can't think of the name of these things. You have to help me out here, folks. You're doing all this study, But those machines that can vibrate on the muscle to soften them up again and de-stress them and such. Actually, one of your business ideas is into that area. In any case, you just get the basics in place, and then usually the team doesn't come together at once. Instead, it'll build it from when they can afford to hire people. And then the team also involves more than paid employees. So you'll have directors, you'll have advisors, you'll have mentors, you'll have friends, you'll have people you'll bounce ideas, getting advice off, because the free advice is usually good advice. And if you know what you're asking, if you know what you're asking is that's critical to you, people generally speaking won't give you a bum steer. They won't send you off on some stupid goose chase as such, And so, what are the liabilities of newness, and what are the pitfalls that you can fall into? So new ventures have the high propensity to fail. Of course they do, because you have to get to know each other. You have to get to know, and if you don't have your market, if you don't know who your market is, immediately you're going to fail. If you're just going to open up shop and hope that people come into you, it's going to fail. Because remember, I said to you, field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. Only if you tell them about it. So you've got to advertise and get posters up there. I don't know if any of you have been following that series, Cobra Kai. It's yay! You only see one hand. But in any case, it's going back to the early 80s. But even in, what was it, episode 3 or 4 or so, he was out putting posters up around the place. We're opening up, Cobra Kai, blah, blah, blah. But that's exactly what happens. You've got to get out and tell people that you exist. So assembling talented people, and we have getting the right people around you that can take over, overcome some of the limitations. So getting the right people with experience and background and so on. So you might be a brilliant physio, okay, or an excellent nutritionist. And you can still have a business because you might hire a manager to run the business for you because your core competency and your expertise is in the physio or in the nutrition and so on. It's not in running companies. It's not in all the other stuff that goes on. So you might end up hiring somebody to run the place for you. You can still be the founder and the worker and get someone to manage the company. That's what happens all the time. Large multinationals, they hire in CEOs to do the work for them, the board as such. They don't want to carry on. And certainly in some of the large techie firms, they'll hire in management teams to help them, because they don't want to be distracted. They like to stick to what they do best. And here are some, just a kind of a collection. You have the board of directors, other professionals, could be colleagues, could be other physios in a different country. You might hear some new therapies that they're practices that they're using, and they might share them with you and so on and so forth. So there are other professionals. It could be a totally different industry altogether. They have some new technology that might be usable in your space. Lenders and investors, of course, they all have a vested interest in your business. They loan you money, so they want to get paid back. And then you have, of course, a board of advisors. Now that could be formal or it can be informal, but it can be a group of people that you bounce your ideas off. And of course, then, as I mentioned, the management team, and most importantly, up at the very top, you have the key employees themselves. Those people that you need initially to get your business running, including yourself and colleagues and so on. And they basically form the ecosystem of your new venture. Okay, all of them play some kind of a role. And you're saying, well, I'm only opening up a physio practice. Do I need a board of directors? No, of course not. You don't need to. You don't go for overkill. It's in time you build up. You might have a small company, but you might have 10, 15 people, and you might have 3 or 4 people as directors who could be the co-owners of the original business that you founded, and may invite someone in from a different a proven track record in companies that can act as a mentor on the board as a non-executive board member. In other words, they don't interfere with the day-to-day running. They're just looking at the annual figures or looking at the accounts and looking at your strategy and advising you here and there and so on. So the founders are the founder or founders. Characteristics of founder or founders of a firm, and their early decisions have a significant impact on the manner in which the new venture team takes shape. And this comes down to the personalities. That's why we get you to do these psychometric tests and so on and so forth. So what kind of a person are you as such? Can you delegate? Can you actually manage? Do you like working with people? Are you introverted, extroverted, and all that sort of stuff? Have you managed leadership qualities or followership qualities and so on? So you might be very, how would say, if you look at the Belbin team roles on the video I uploaded last week, very important set of videos, not just because I made them. Well, that is true as well. But it gives you an indication of the types of roles that people will assume. As I said in the video, that they're dynamic roles. We change, but you have certain people who are meticulous and focused on detail and such. The worker. They use one of the role descriptors, and and you need that type of person who can get on and do stuff and cover all the bases and so on. And then you'll have the plant, someone that comes up with ideas and is constantly but can communicate those ideas. So the founders can be a mix of some of those personalities, and you need to have the complements to it. But if you're leaning towards coming up to towards the plant, you're constantly coming up with new ideas and so on. That sets the tone of the business, that it's, high energetic, constantly coming up with new ideas. Problem is, you might not have the follow through to make them work. I did work with a guy, or consulted with him many years ago, and we actually called him, he was a great ideas man. And no sooner would he have an idea and get a skeleton crew around to start fleshing out the idea, and he was already thinking of something else, something sometimes totally different altogether. And he was brilliant at going out to talk to fundraisers as such, and raising money for the companies that he set up. And but the point about it was that it was hard to pin him down. It's, just stay focused. Where's your follow through? And that kind of fell back into the people in the organization, in the companies. They were small companies, but it came back into them, and they felt, geez, he's great ideas, but he's no follow through. I'm not staying around here. I'm not hanging around here. I'm moving off. I don't feel secure. And that was one of the fundamental problems with it. Now, I love these profound statements. Studies have shown that 50 to 70% of all new ventures are started by one or more individual. So what? Do we need to have big studies? Simple stats if we can pull that together, for crying out loud. But experts disagree about whether new ventures started by a team have an advantage over those started by a sole entrepreneur. Who gives a rat's ass? Just, get on. And generally speaking, I would lean on the side of the team. If you have a few people, there's more thought that goes into it. There's more idea bouncing around, and you have, when you do decide to run with your idea, the concept, whatever, at least you've put a bit more thought into it. Sometimes as an individual, a lot of the time, you can be very myopic and be totally in love with your idea and blah blah, and you won't see the wood from the trees. So it's far healthier to have others involved in the idea. And sometimes you might have come up with the idea on your own, and then bring in some people in to build a team around like-minded people, and split the shares whatever way you want to. But it works far more effectively. So the advantages: you have more talent, better resources, new ideas for the new adventure, bouncing ideas around the place. Teams bring a broader, deeper network of social and professional contacts. So the people that you work with, they have their network of people, and they'll have another network. So the more diverse the people that you bring together on your team, the bigger the networks that you can involve and interact with for advice and testing and so on and so on. So the psychological support, obviously, that co-founders of a business can offer for one another, at least, can be an important element in the venture success. And the simple reason is that healthy debate or conflict will sort out a lot of issues at the start of the new venture or the new opportunity. It can sort out a lot of the issues and risks, but also it becomes self-motivating. People start to get the buzz, and they begin to get collectively as a team, they can see, and even some people might be more hyped than others, but when everyone gets a bit more clarity, it becomes balanced, and then all 3 or 4 or 6 people start to move at the same pace, so to speak, but their drive is much higher than the drive of one person in terms of making it or pushing towards a successful outcome. Some of the disadvantages, well, these are the obvious. They're the opposite of what I've already said. You're going to have conflict. You're going to have fights inside there. And God knows, I've seen one beautiful little company, startup at least, and they never quite got to launch their product. They got investors on board, and the 2 founders just couldn't hack it together. And the reason was, one of them wasn't committed fully to the company, kept going with the part-time job that person had, and the other person felt, this is a 24/7. We need to put the effort in here, and they split and went their separate ways, and the whole thing just collapsed. And it was really, really disappointing because it was a cracking product service that they actually were developing. It was really good, and they were making all the right moves in the right directions, and they were really getting interest into the company, and personalities just killed it. There was nothing I could do to salvage. They asked me to come on board. They were even freaking offering me part ownership, and I said no, that would be unethical for me as their lecturer and mentor previously, and now no, I couldn't do that. But gladly tried to help them out and so on and so forth. And that was fundamentally, I could not persuade one person. You need to pack in your job. It's taking up too much time. You're not turning up to work. It's causing problems and so on. And there was no listening, unfortunately. So founders have similar areas of expertise they may duplicate rather, and that's the problem with the homogeneity of a team. If you're all coming from the same type of backgrounds, it can be a disadvantage, because you won't see, and most likely you'll have the same type of networks anyway. So there's not a lot. Numbers from the same background doesn't work. And teams can easily disagree in terms of work habits, which I just described, tolerances for risk, levels of passion for the business, and so on. So I'll kind of mention all these and given the case example of this company, that it was actually one of our first companies that we had from our entrepreneurship academy in AIT. There were a couple that came out of this, and this one was the how would I say, was heading towards star performer, but unfortunately it died. So if we look again, the heterogeneous rather than homogeneous teams tend to be more effective, of course, when you have different backgrounds and so on. So a team starting an educational software company, for example, if you have, you have educators, you might have lecturers, teachers on there, you might have software engineers, you might have marketing people, you put them all together, you have three very distinct backgrounds, but you're writing educational software. Does a marketing person know how to write software? Probably not. Will a teacher? Yeah, unlikely. But they have different skill sets that they bring together, and that's the important thing about it. So the woman on the left in this case is a former teacher, and then in the middle you have a software engineer, and then on the right you have someone with a business background, just by way of demonstrating what I've just described. So having those diverse backgrounds. But it doesn't just apply in these new venture situations. I've had a lecture earlier on today with on project management and enterprise development and so on, business modeling and stuff. And the same kind of theme is coming out in this, that you have to have cross functions. And through all my years of experience working in organizations, the most effective teams are those cross functional teams. So you have different backgrounds, marketing, HR, finance, operations, R&D, and so on. You build the team from those functions inside in a large organization to introduce a new product or service. You've far higher propensity for success because people don't get involved in the politics of bullshit that does go on, unfortunately. So if you look here, the preferred attributes of the sole entrepreneurs and members of the venture team. So higher education. Evidence suggests that important entrepreneurial skills are enhanced through higher education. Let me go to the next point first. And then prior entrepreneurial experience. Founders familiar with the entrepreneurial process are more likely to avoid costly mistakes than founders with similar experience. It's kind of stating the obvious. However, the second point is, if you've been through the loop, the American metric of success is failure. You've had to have at least failed once to be successful. And the simple reason is that you learn from your failures and you bring them forward and you turn them around. That's learning from mistakes. They all do it. In actual fact, after our financial crash here in Ireland, it almost became a badge to say, oh yeah, my company went into receivership, my company was wound down and so on, but I'm rebuilding again and so on, so on. And to be honest with you, I found that a breath of fresh air when people were adapting that attitude. So what, they screwed up, was it their own fault? Not necessarily. There were external pressures caused them. You're having the same right now. Look at, I mean, God forbid, look at the number of companies that and small services that are being offered in your space that can't even practice, for crying out loud. You know, okay, some nutritionists are able to go online and so on. Some physios have managed to get their online presence and their Zoom exercise and this, that, and they're coming out of the woodwork. I got one today from Global Cycling Network, and how to burn fat, for example. High intensity training sessions. So people have adapted and so on. So fair play to them. They've used their heads. So rather than being sitting in here on pup payments, looking at ways of how can I keep my own mind active and still keep my business open. Now we're getting to the point where companies are beginning to get pretty pissed off of these lockdowns. Wasn't there an issue today with the lady in Balbriggan with the nail bar? I think it was, or whatever they call it. I think it was nail bar, or something like that. She opened, and it took several hours or so before the guards were called and told her to close down and all that sort of stuff. Was she being radical? Not necessarily, because that's the sentiment of many thousands of businesses in Ireland right now. And people are really, really at the end of their tether when it comes to it, and a lot of decisions are not consistent and are not making sense. 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers exercising. Anyway, it goes on and on like this. So the evidence suggests that the entrepreneurial skills are enhanced through higher education. I'm not a great believer in that. I'm a firm believer that the passion is the most critical attribute. Education has its place, and sometimes the more educated you are, the more risk averse you are, because you believe you know it all and it isn't worth it, and so on. So it can, knowing too much or knowing a lot can be a disadvantage. Sometimes when you're green, let's just say, not as educated, we tend to take more risks, and but we fail and learn faster. So I'm not I wouldn't subscribe wholly to this idea of being more educated being a huge advantage in any shape or form. Definitely not. So having relevant industry experience. So founders with relevant industry experience are more likely to have better established professional networks, most definitely, and more applicable marketing and management skills. So when you're coming from, now I've spent all my years working in the telecoms IT industry, and my network is in there. Now, of course, I know other industries and so on and so forth, but my experience and subsequent levels of expertise are in that industry predominantly. Now, I've looked at other areas, of course, but the whole point about it is the more it's depth of knowledge is what we're talking about here. And if now that said, you might start out your career as a physio, you might end up as I don't know, a marketing expert for health sciences, or for private clinics as such. But at least you've built it on something that was relevant. Okay, and all education, all experiences, they will have some links throughout your whole careers, no matter what route you end up taking. I guarantee you that. As I said, I started out in accounting. Now look at me. Oh, I must have pissed off somebody along the road. I'm joking. Anyway, the broad social and professional networks, these are important. As I said, one of the key attributes is, your professional attributes is your net worth is your net work. Okay, always remember that. So keep in touch with your classmates. That's your starting point, because at least they're in the same professions as yourselves. Then as you move out into different courses, you'll be probably choosing to do masters in one university. Could be here, could be abroad, somewhere else, and you might look at your network and say, well, I'm over here and they're doing this and we're doing that over there, and all this sort of stuff. So all this adds to your knowledge and your understanding of your profession. Okay, and it's really important to keep a good network going. And use LinkedIn. I've said it before. keep that going, and a professional version of LinkedIn. Be careful. So recruiting, as I say, when you have a gap, when you don't have marketing people, when you don't have financial people, you go out and you hire them. But you don't give them top of the range salaries and hire them 24/7. It depends on at what state your startup is in. If you're very fresh, you might just organize somebody. You could be several weeks, you could be months into the business. You might be working yourself to the bone, working around the clock, trying to do the accounts, figure out a bit of marketing, and say, I haven't enough time for all this. I need to pay somebody. So are we making enough money to get somebody in on a part-time basis? That's exactly how it works. And that's precisely how you should be doing it. So we look for the skills profile, and it says is a chart that depicts the most important skills that are needed and where the skills gap exists. So knowing who you are, what people are working on the team today in the organization or in the new venture, what are we missing? We have this, and maybe one of your team did a nighttime course in accounting practices, so they're able to do something in accounting. Maybe they did year one of the accounting technicians course, so but they're now physiotherapists, so they might have done, so there's some skills. So you need to know what we all know. Okay, great book by Carla Odell. If we only knew what they already know, talking about our staff, and if we had a benchmark or an inventory take of what people know, what courses they've done, both formally and informally, they all add weight and add information. And then we say, this is what we have, this is what we need. We don't have any substantial marketing, or maybe somebody did a 6-week crash course in marketing and say, it's not enough, we need more, we need to be able to go digital, we need to go online, and so on, so on. So we identify these gaps, and the first place, anyone willing to take this on, do we do it ourselves or do we hire on? And probably say, no, we're overworked here, we're trying to keep and the important thing is, it might be the first question, and most likely to say, we need to focus on doing what we do to generate the revenue to be able to pay for these people to grow the business. That's just another way of looking at the skills gap as such, filling in a brochure for fitness drinks company as such, and what gaps are you missing. I'm going to put my glasses on just to see, what are you missing? You're missing HR, the zeros are the ones you're missing. You're missing account, you have accounting. You're missing community relations, and you're missing, what's this? Franchise operations. So of course, do you want to create your business, sometimes you'll franchise it out, sometimes you'll subcontract it out, and so on, but you don't have the expertise. There are gaps that you need to fill. Board of directors, I'll fly through this because essentially it's not really important. Again, depends on the type of startup you have. So directors, panel of individuals who are elected by a corporation's shareholders. Now these all sound like big fucking multinational. They're not. There can be small companies that can have and replace corporation with company to oversee the management of the firm. So your directors, and typically made up of both inside and outside directors. So an inside director person, also an officer of the firm, it could be the MD, could be the chief financial officer, could be the chief operations officer. They're just titles. Could be the founders of the company, and someone outside who's not employed by the firm. So you could have a director who could be as I said, a type of consultant, a business mentor, a coach, and you invite them on. It could be another entrepreneur that's already set up businesses and who was successful, and invite them onto your board. Now you might give them a remuneration. You could pay them 1,000 a month. You could be paying them 1,000 a year. You could be paying them 10,000 a year. You could be paying them 120,000 a year. It depends, but usually they come in and you might only meet them 2, 3, 4 times a year, so they can give you input to see you're going in the right direction, advise you and mentor you, and so on and so forth. Generally speaking, I was going to say generally speaking, they're not paid, but that's not altogether true. You do have what's it called? Directors' emoluments. It's a kind of a way of paying for their time to solve a problem for you, generally. So formal responsibilities, so appointee officer, so you have to have an MD. Okay, you have to have someone that at the helm, so to speak. And you have to have someone that's running the operations. You have to have someone for marketing. So kind of designate the roles. Now Now, the marketing person might not be a full-time member, but they can still be on your payroll 2 days a week, 2 weeks a month kind of thing, whatever the case may be, while you're starting off with a view to making it more and more permanent as they grow it. And of course, their targets will be get customers in. The more we get, the more market we get, the more we get customers in, the more you can start paying for full-time staff longer. Okay. Oversee the affairs of the corporation and declare dividends. Well, are you going to, that might be splitting the profits at the end of the year. So the board will decide, we've made 100,000 profit after all salaries have paid and all the other bills have been paid. So of the 100,000, do we keep it all and we split it up amongst ourselves, or do we split up part of it? Give ourselves maybe 10 grand each, pay for a holiday, and the rest goes into expanding the business and so on, so on. You have to decide, and that's what the board of directors do, what's good for the company as opposed to the individual. Frequency of meeting, most boards meet 3 or 4 times a year, as I say, usually just to review the accounts, past review, see how things have been going, and then to define maybe what the strategy is, and might meet a couple of times during the year to see, are we following the strategy, are we growing as well as we should be, or we had planned to be. And then most ventures are most likely to pay their board members in the company's stock, or ask them to serve on a voluntary basis rather than pay cash honorarium. So yeah, you might give them shares in their company and they will offer advice. Eventually they'll get a return on their advice by their share value going up. So the company grows, it has a market value, the company has a price, and the shares go up. And therefore they might sell the shares back to you or to somebody else, and they make a profit. Well, they make a lot of money because they were given the shares to be on the board in the first place. Can be a form of structure to incentivize people to be proactive in their organization. So what a board of directors can do to help a startup although a board of directors has formal governing responsibilities, its most useful role is to provide guidance. Okay, advice to the managers. And secondly, then another function of the board is to lend legitimacy to the firm. So well-known and respected board members bring instant credibility. So if you were to take on, I don't know, if you said Michael O'Leary, if you knew him personally or you knew him through friends and so on, and you asked him to be on your board of directors, and if you're fortunate enough to say, yeah, no problem, you can use my name and so on, that's a freaking hell of a door opener in many cases. A door slammer in there, a few others, depending on who you're dealing with. But generally speaking, having somebody that's been through the hoops, someone that's well known in business, to bring them onto your board as such, someone that's set up something and is successful in that same space or other space. And sometimes investors say, that's a very clever company, they're into sports health and they got an airline director, well-known airline director. This is interesting. He must see potential either in the management team or in the business itself. Let's invest, and so on. So, it doesn't, as I said, doesn't necessarily have to be in the same industry. It helps, but it doesn't have to be. So again, you have the role of the professional advisors, board of advisors, other professionals, lenders, and investors. So all of these just other names for people that can part of your network. Would you have an actual board of advisors? Probably not. The directors usually is enough, plus all the founders' networks. They can be an informal board, people that you can bounce ideas off of. So an advisor board can be established for general purposes or can be set up to address specific issues or needs. I wouldn't even go there. I mean, that's just creating layers of stuff. It says, unlike the board of directors, an advisory board possesses no legal responsibility for the firm and gives non-binding advice and so on. Most companies don't do that nowadays. They don't set up boards of advisors. They will seek precise advice when they need. For instance, if you're trying to get rid of somebody out of your organization, you might speak to a specialist HR company. They're not board or advisors. You're going to be paying these people for the best advice. You might hire solicitors and so on. You might hire marketing consultants to advise you. You don't need boards of advisors. It's I can't see the benefits of them. We're not even going to continue with them. Guidelines for organising them. Firms should look for boards of members who are compatible and complement one another in terms of experience. So I'd ignore this stuff around boards of advisors. People can be former lecturers. Let's just say some of your physio lecturers. Some of them might have been sports personalities as such. Therefore, they'd have more insight into particular areas that you want to develop. They're advisors. Lenders and investors, now, on the other hand, have a vested interest, of course, because they put money in. Therefore, they want to see a return on their investment. So like the other non-employee members of the firm's new venture team, the lenders and investors have helped new firms by providing guidance and lending advice. They're going to provide the advice because they've put money into you, and they want to make sure that they advise you correctly. They're not going to cause you to fail because their money is gone if they do so as an investor. Now, what I just said is generally true. However, in the dark side of it, you might find that some of the lenders and investors might be steering you in a wrong direction to devalue the company such that they could buy it out totally and say, geez, Mark, you're not going anywhere. That business is, I think we're going to have to cut our losses and sell the company. And they might have another buyer already lined up and they're creaming it off one place. So, and that goes on. It happens. Didn't it happen last week, a couple of weeks ago, with the GameStop company and the games, and all the people came together and upset the whole investment structure and so on and so forth, and cost a couple of company billions of dollars and almost put them out of business, because the investors and investment funds were downplaying the company, and the people who were using the GameStop products said, hang on, we have a whole community of people using this, forget about your crap, we'll buy the shares ourselves. And they rocked the whole boat, totally messed up that thing for a while, to the point that nearly had to start bringing in legislation to close down systems that people couldn't buy any shares any longer and so on. It got really messy altogether. I never followed through on what the end result was, but it gave the traditional investors and fund managers, it gave them a serious fright. Let's put it that way. But that can happen. So why? Because these are in it to make money. They'll sell you, force you to put you in a position to sell your company. They'll have another buyer in there. They'll appear to take a loss. They've already invested in your company. But they'll be selling it on to somebody else at a massive profit. So they've gotten back their investment. They've sold it on to somebody else, and they probably still have a shareholding in this new company at a higher value and so on. So that's the dark side of it. Unfortunately, it's business and it happens. So in addition to firms, lenders and investors assume a natural role of providing financial oversight. Generally speaking, yes, and the oversight I'm talking about is they loan you money, but they also want to see how it's being spent. In other words, that you're not wasting it in the wrong areas and going out buying, flash cars and expensive suits to look the part, whereas you haven't been selling the business as such, that's probably a bit pedantic, but nevertheless, it's that kind of oversight that you're not wasting that. In other words, you're not spending too much money on your equipment and no money on marketing, because, as I said, if you build and they don't come, then all the equipment in the world is useless to you if people aren't coming to buy it. So putting that financial oversight onto it, checklist is important. So why lenders and investors add value to a firm? Identify and recruit key. So you could actually go to your investors, look, we need someone with a financial background, or we need somebody, do you know anyone that could lend their time or give some time to us, and so on. Help the venture fine-tune its business model, of course, because they've been through it so many times with other companies and types of companies, so they can help you build your business model canvas and do it more effectively and fine-tune it here and so on. Provide introduction to additional source of capital. This is through these networks, angel networks, for example, they can introduce you into these because they exist. There was one up here set up in DCU, Silver Surfers entrepreneurs. Anyone over 50 could join this group that wanted to set up business and so on. So it was remarkable to see the different people of different backgrounds who whose careers were pretty much coming up towards retirement, and in many cases, a lot of them had already retired, so they had money, they wanted to invest, they wanted to get into an idea and get the sleeves rolled up again. So that's another type of network as such. But all these different networks exist. Coffee mornings, lunch meetings, and all this sort of stuff that do go on. For a lot of them would be supported by county enterprise boards and Enterprise Ireland and so on. So you need to get out there and mix and mingle. Provide insight into how the markets that their new venture plans want to enter. Help you grow, help you identify new markets, new market segments, and then serve as a sounding board. Okay, here's our idea. This is where we want to take it, and we want to go out to the next level. What do you think? Are we ready to go? Is the market big enough? And so on. So getting more advice, and serve on the new ventures board of directors or board of advisors. Sometimes you will have the investors. So Enterprise Ireland might appoint somebody to sit on your board as well, depending on the size of your company and so on, just to look after their investment and see that you're going around. And you do have them. You have these mentors. There's a whole thousands of them in Enterprise Ireland that would be assigned to companies and generally they'd have working experience in the particular industry you're in. If it's in IT, they'll put somebody with that has built a company at least once and put them on as a mentor, and they get paid from Enterprise Ireland. They get paid from you as well. That's how it works here in Ireland. And then, of course, it can help you with to recruit customers, because they have their own networks, so they could steer customers towards your business. Help arrange business partnerships. If you're a nutritionist, they might have a connection to a pharmacy retail distribution network, or a list of pharmacies that could stock your products and so on. So it's like the Dragon's Den. They all have different skills they can bring, and help you launch your product. Open doors for you to the likes of Musgrave, so as your products could, once they're certified and approved, can be sold in any one of their stores, for example. So you have an instant channel to customers. So, and provide a sense of stability and calm. So it helps you to think of things that you might not have thought about. So do devil's advocate. So serve on the board of directors or boards of advisors. So that's where the lenders and investors can come in. So lastly, you'll be delighted to know, last PowerPoint, other professionals that make up the firm's new venture might include attorneys, accountants, and business consultants, past lecturers. Oh, God help us. Anyone at all. Friends, colleagues, parents, God knows who else that can be, that have, knowledge that might be of benefit to you. Anyone else. And they say other professionals, anyone with experience that can benefit you, can help you. Business consultants is an individual who gives professional or expert advice, and they're all over the place. One thing I'd say about consultants, and it's the thing that I practice, I don't go into companies and consult and say, right, there's the report, you owe me 5,000, 10,000 euros. The model I use, that I've picked up from the days of the consultants back in the 80s and 90s, that's what they did. They went in, and the big firms went in, and they looked at things, and they produced a nice glossy report, said, there's what you need to do, off you go, and we'll charge a fortune for that report because we've consulted and we've asked people. It doesn't work like that anymore. We changed companies and changed many years ago by saying that, right, produce your report, we'll pay you half. Now implement your report, we'll pay you another quarter. And if you get the results that you expected based on your report, we pay the final part. So people now are hiring consultants to do it exactly like that. They don't just come in, produce a glossy report and run, and left the company carrying the can for trying to do what these consultants have told them to do. Now the consultants work in more of a partnership now with companies, generally speaking. And that's how it works, and that's how you build your reputation as a consultant, or build up your own organization by having consultants that operate like that. So be careful who you act or hire in as a consultant, and the terms and conditions, most importantly. So business consultants fall into two categories: consultants and consultants who are paid consultants and who are available for free or at a reduced rate through a non-profit or government agency. So Enterprise Ireland's consultants or mentors fall into that latter category. Other consultants can be professionals, usually they're sole traders, or you could be paying the high-end guys, the likes of Price Waterhouse, PwC, you have KPMG, you have Mazar, you have who's the other crowd? McKinsey, all these global organizations that have consultants and advisors that cost an absolute fortune. Why? Because of the brand, they've built their name as such. So that's it, folks. That's for that's the final gelling together of New Ventures, the teams side of it, and what you need to put together, plus the previous videos, and that's all you need to know and would be afraid to ask about in relation to teams, the roles within teams, and how to lead or not inside teams. Do you have any questions? Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that, folks. I'll package this and I'll put it up onto your YouTube channel as usual, and you can go back over to find it if you wish at any other stage. All right, folks, I'll let you go. Early tea time, dinner, whatever, and we'll see you next week. Take it easy.